Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbart Gaming. It's been a while since I reviewed a modern game. How come? Well, because they tend to be my worst performing videos. If you thought that'd be enough to make me give up,
well, you're wrong!
I'm a well-known glutton for punishment, and I have some things to say about the latest game I've played, Contra Operation Galuga. So strap yourself in for a quick review that covers whether it's a good game and whether fans of classic Contra will dig it. Disclosures here, I bought this one with my own hard-earned money, but I did get it on sale for $20. I'll tell you what I think it's worth at the end of the video. Alright, let's get on with it. If you're new to the channel, you may not know that I'm a huge Contra fan. I love the classic arcade games, as well as the games that appeared on the NES, Genesis, Super Nintendo, and more. I've done a lot of videos on Contra games, and even one of my very first complete game comparisons on the channel was of the arcade and NES versions of the original Contra. It's a terrible video from years ago, but hey, you can see my no-death run of the NES version there if you want. Now, I'm not going to waste your time with going into too much history here. I just want to let you know that I'm a huge fan of the franchise and really enjoy a lot of the more recent Contra alikes too. I really liked Blazing Chrome, Super Cyborg, and most recently Iron Meat. Needless to say, I was kind of excited, albeit cautiously optimistic, when Konami announced Contra Operation Galuga in 2024. When the game came out, it had a bit of a lukewarm reception, and the Switch version in particular was bashed for performance issues. Now, I'll be reviewing the PC version of the game here today, and if you care about system specs, I'm running it on a Ryzen 5 7600 desktop with an RTX 3060 Ti, 32 gigs of RAM, and have the game installed on an NVMe drive. I played it using an 8-bit DO, and yes, it's DO, not DOE according to the company itself, Ultimate Controller. I played the game at 1440p and 120 frames per second, although in this video you'll be seeing at 1080p 60 frames per second. First up, Contra Operation Galuga is a standard run-and-gun game developed by WayForward, with gameplay that will be familiar to fans of classic Contra games. WayForward had also developed Contra 4 for the Nintendo DS. Now, this new Contra game has 8 side-scrolling levels, many of which are heavily inspired by levels from earlier games in the series, but this game is all new. It is not a remake of any prior Contra game. It's got a story mode, an arcade mode, a challenge mode, and a shop to unlock tons of bonus content with in-game currency that you earn only by playing the game. The game uses modern polygonal graphics and has a MIDI-sounding orchestral-style soundtrack filled with motifs from earlier games in the series. What's new here is you've got a whole bunch of unlockable characters, many of which have unique play mechanics. I won't go into all of them here, but there's a good amount of variety with some characters who have grappling hooks, some can dash, some can slide, one has a jetpack, and many have unique weapon variations. Also, some can double jump, and one even has a triple jump. Going back to weapons, like Super Contra and Contra 4, you can power up each weapon one time by picking up a duplicate weapon icon. So each weapon has 2 power levels. You have a life bar with the standard options in this game, and if you get hit with a powered-up weapon, the power level goes down. If you lose all your energy and die, you lose whatever weapon you currently have equipped. What's new with weapons here is that you can also overload them, which consumes the weapon but creates a special effect. The most useful one is probably the machine gun, since that one gives you temporary invincibility when overloaded. Now let's briefly discuss story mode. The presentation isn't great, and a lot of the still art has a distinct low-budget feel. Now, I'm not knocking the artists or anything, but this game, it just doesn't feel like it was a priority for Konami. Also, I have to say, I couldn't possibly care less about the story in a Contra game. I never have and never will. Maybe unless we get some sort of wacky Contra RPG. That one, I'd probably care about the story in. But for a run-and-gun action title, I just want to play the game. Thankfully, you can do that in arcade mode, but even then, you still have a few cutscenes, but at least you could skip them. The story mode is still how I recommend anyone new to the game play it the first time, especially if your run-and-gun skills are a bit rusty, because it's easier than the arcade mode, and you can always start levels with a few lives. You'll also unlock a few characters just by playing through it. In arcade mode, you get 1 set of lives and whatever 1-ups you can earn throughout the game. Both modes allow you to continue. Now, the levels themselves are pretty bland for the most part. The artwork isn't very compelling. The environments are just unimaginative. This is not how you bring back an old classic and spark new interest in it. Also, most of the levels are way too long. Your first time through most of them, it'll probably take you between 8 and 12 minutes. Multiply that by 8 levels and you've got a game here that even in arcade mode, with no cutscenes, will be over an hour long for the vast majority of people playing it. My best time so far in a complete arcade mode run is 58 minutes. And hey, I even earned an achievement for that one because it's considered fast. Anyway, as far as the levels, they are all side-scrolling run-and-gun levels. There are no alternate levels with different play mechanics to shake up the action. We get a jungle, an enemy base where you ride a speeder bike thing, a village/waterfall combo level, an enemy lab, a speeding train in the snow, an ancient temple, the alien's lair, and then a sort of second different alien's lair full of lava. Many sections of the levels feature designs right out of the NES version of the original game, and they also incorporate climbing on walls like in Contra 3 and Contra Hardcore. Now as for the play mechanics themselves, they're okay. Contra Operation Galuga is a decent game. However, the one thing that defines Contra to me is really firing your gun of choice super fast, and in this game, that doesn't happen. Most weapons have auto-fire, and there's a delay between each shot that feels like it's too long for the majority of them. I want to mash the button and get super fast spread shots. I want the standard pea shooter to be useful because you can fire it as fast as you can tap. The forced wait between each shot really dials down the intensity the game should have had. Now the weapons for the main characters, Bill and Lance, are primarily derived from older games in the series. The standard rifle, which stinks, the machine gun, which stinks in this game except for when you overload it, the classic spread gun, a laser, a flamethrower, homing missiles, and crusher missiles are all available. Weapons for other characters vary a bit. The overload mechanic is pretty interesting, with some effects that are really worthwhile, like the aforementioned invincibility from the machine gun. You can also summon a weapon blimp when you fill a meter enough, which helps correct the Contra issue of having long gaps with no weapon pickups available, so there's a good change. Overall, I'd say the gameplay is good, but honestly it's not as good as some other recent run-and-guns. I prefer Iron Meat to this game quite a bit, and frankly it's nowhere near as much fun as, say, Contra, Super Contra, Contra 3, or even Contra Hardcore. Now, no matter how much is happening at any given moment in Contra Operation Galuga, something just feels decidedly un-Contra-like about the entire affair. Now when it comes to extras, this game has plenty to keep any player coming back for a while if they enjoy it. There are several characters to unlock. Some unlock automatically as you progress through the story mode, and then there are others that you buy with the previously mentioned in-game currency. You can buy a bunch of perks like extra lives and extended life bars, and also increase the powers of some of your traversal moves. You can also buy alternate soundtracks from older games in the series, and older games from different Konami series as well. Some of the stuff in here is pretty cool, but having said that, some of it really costs way too many points to unlock. I can already tell you I doubt I'll ever get everything, because you'd have to play through this game a whole lot of times to earn enough points to get everything, and frankly I didn't enjoy it enough to want to do that. I put in about 9 hours, and I have definitely had my fill for the foreseeable future. There's also a mission mode, which is kind of similar to what we saw in Contra 4 on the DS. Essentially, you'll play through small slices of levels and try to complete them as fast as possible. Sometimes there's a strict time limit, sometimes there are conditions where you're not allowed to take hits, you're not allowed to kill any enemies, or you might have to accomplish a certain task. The variety here is decent, although some of the challenges are pretty sadistic, especially some of those boss fights they want you to do with alternate characters. Still, if you're decent at Contra, it'll probably only take you about 2 hours to clear every challenge in the game, assuming you've unlocked all the characters. Challenges for unlockable characters don't show up until after you unlock those characters first. Speaking of extra characters, the ones that you pay for are from Contra Hardcore, so if you're an especially big fan of that game, you might be particularly interested in this one. Okay, let's talk issues. Now I already covered the gameplay doesn't quite feel like classic Contra and the production values are a bit on the low side. Those are things that I can live with. But this game, at least the PC version I played through, has lots of bugs and glitches. I don't know if they're in the console version since I haven't played those. First up, there was one instance where I killed a mini-boss and I died at the same time he did. The game let me continue, it showed the checkpoint when it loaded back in and I was right there in the mini-boss's area, but my character was off-screen. And then my character, I could hear them moving and shooting and I could make them jump off-screen, but after a moment, they entered from the right side of the screen and the whole level just started over. So I played through the whole level again and reached the point where I had fought the mini-boss. The boss was gone, so I continued onward thinking everything was okay. That's when weird stuff happened. Like there were lots of enemy gun placements that looked destroyed, but they were still able to fire at me as if they were still there. After realizing that something was really screwed up, I had to let the game kill me and then I continued again, and finally it started working right. So again, I figured okay, maybe that was just one-time weirdness. But then, as I started to go through the levels in challenge mode, I noticed when you die with enemies on the screen in some of those levels, when you restart the challenge, those enemies that were on screen when you died are there right at the beginning of the challenge next time, even though they shouldn't be. That was also not a one-time thing, or a two-time thing. I would say it happened at least 10 times, and it's a lack of polish that's frankly shocking. None of the indie run-and-gun games I mentioned at the top of this video had problems like this. And frankly, it's kinda shameful. I may be a bit old-fashioned, but I think that when you put a game out, it should work. And this one has been out for a good long while now. More than long enough for these problems to have been fixed. On top of all that, I've had characters fall through solid floors in arcade mode on more than one occasion. And I've also had challenge mode fail on me almost immediately after starting the challenge because of a failure condition that had loaded the last time that I was in the challenge. So yeah, this is not a well-polished game at all. Okay, let's wrap this up, shall we? Now, you may think I've been a little harsh on Contra Operation Galuga at times in this review, and I've got to say, all of it is well-deserved. It's still an okay game, it's just not the intense return to Contra form that I think most fans would like to see at this point. Instead, we've got a title that looks alright, has music that by default really doesn't fit the style of the game, and gameplay that's pretty good but doesn't quite feel enough like the old Contra games. And overall, Contra Operation Galuga evokes the classic games in many ways without really feeling like it especially respects them. I wish they would have had a level or two with different gameplay styles, like running into the bases, or even an overhead level. I had the same complaint about Iron Meat, by the way. It just feels like both of these games could have used a little more variety. For Contra Operation Galuga, it's weird that it doesn't have that variety since Contra 4 from Way Forward did. Now the story mode here is about as dull and pointless as story modes get. But if you're like me, you don't really care about the story anyway, so you can live with that. On the plus side, we do get a boatload of unlockable extra stuff. I just wish most of these extras were less expensive to unlock, and I'd be willing to bet that most people never even get to most of the good stuff because the good stuff requires way too many points. And also, the bugs in this game, still present several months after its release, are just pretty inexcusable. So, as far as my review for Contra Operation Galuga goes, I'm giving it a generous 6 out of 10. It's an okay game, and I think it was worth the $20 I paid for it. But I don't really think it's worth more than that, and I don't recommend anyone buy it at full price. If you're watching this and haven't played the other games I mentioned at the top of this review, things like Blazing Chrome, Super Cyborg, and Iron Meat, I'd say all three of them are better than this one, with Iron Meat being the best of the bunch, and I'd heartily recommend playing that instead of Contra Operation Galuga. So Contra, Konami didn't exactly do you dirty here, but Operation Galuga definitely ain't the return to form that longtime fans were hoping for. It's perfectly fine aside from the bugs, and people will enjoy it for a bit. But it's not memorable, and I don't see anyone coming back to it over and over again like the best games in the series. I really hope Konami can figure out what to do with this franchise, but I'm not sure how many more misfires the series can take and keep on going. Okay folks, it's your turn. What do you think? Have you played Contra Operation Galuga? What did you think of it? Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm as wrong as a human being can possibly be? Tell me all about it in the comments. That'll do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed it, please like and share it online somewhere. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss any of my videos. If you want to support the work that I do here, you can do that on Patreon, Ko-fi, or right here on YouTube through things like channel memberships and super thanks. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.